Welcome to the High Income Business Writing Podcast, helping you propel your writing business to a whole new level. And now, here's your host, Ed Gandia.
Today, I want to talk about a question you're probably starting to hear. And if you haven't yet, there's a good chance you'll hear this question soon. A client asks, wait, you use AI now? Shouldn't this cost less? If you've ever had a client ask that, you know the feeling. Part of you wants to defend yourself because you're offended. Maybe you're hurt. Maybe you're annoyed or angry that they're even asking that question. Part of you wants to avoid the conversation. And part of you might even start thinking, well, I am faster now, so what's fair here? So let's walk through a clean way to handle this situation without getting weird about it, without accidentally negotiating against yourself. First, here's the key thing you must understand. When a client asks this question, they're usually not trying to insult you. They're doing what any buyer does when they hear new tool or new efficiency. They assume your price is based on your time. So if the time goes down, the price should go down. At least that's kind of the thinking. And let's face it, this is a human thing. We do this ourselves. We just don't pay attention to it. We maybe don't notice it. And we do it many times as a consumer. I think one of the things that makes it difficult for us as writers, as creative professionals, is that our identity as a writer, as a professional, as a human being is so tied to our craft that it's very easy to take offense because a question or an attack about how we do things, our work, is an attack on us. We may not think about it that way, but that's what's going on subconsciously. And these are all human things. Now, when you start getting questions about your productivity, your use of these tools to help you go faster, it's often a clue that you have not fully framed what the client or the prospect is buying. Because when you think about it, nobody pays, let's say, a surgeon less money because the procedure got faster, right? In fact, I would even argue that we want faster when it comes to surgery. We want better, a more efficient procedure. We want an outpatient situation, not a 3-day hospital stay, right? So what's different about surgery? I think that's a really good question to ask ourselves. As patients, we pay for what? We pay for an outcome, a favorable, a positive outcome. We pay for the judgment, the risk reduction, and the fact that the surgeon knows what to do when something gets complicated, when something doesn't go quite as it should. We want the best person on the job when that happens. That's the direction you want to take this conversation when it does come up with a client or a prospect. Also, a quick note, you don't have to pretend AI doesn't make you faster. It often does, but let's face it, it doesn't always do that. In many cases, you'll spend just as much time with an AI workflow as you did before AI. So too often, the value of AI comes from other things, not necessarily efficiency. But even if and when you're faster, speed is not the product here. Speed is just one feature of your delivery system. And your price should not reflect a discount for efficiency. Here's the reframe I want you to keep in your back pocket. My price is based on the value and the responsibility of the work, not on whether I typed every word manually. That's it. Then you give them a quick, concrete list of what they're actually paying for, what outcomes and what value they can expect, and why you are the lowest risk option for them. In other words, you move them from hours and keystrokes to outcomes and standards. This is consistent with value-based pricing logic, which is that pricing is based on the value to the client rather than the cost of inputs. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's now get practical. If you want a short response that you can give the client that doesn't invite a debate, you can use something like this. Totally fair question. I do use AI in parts of my process the same way I use other tools, but you're not paying for typing time. You're paying for the thinking, the decisions, and the quality control that comes from doing this well for a long time. I've spent 22 years building the judgment and the discernment to know what to keep, what needs to go, what's off brand, what's risky. AI often and not always helps me move faster, but it doesn't replace those other things. I'm still responsible for the outcome. And then just pause. Let them respond. I find that it's important to have, and you don't have to memorize your statement, your justification, but you need to have something that you practice. And the key is you deliver it and then you pause. You need to give them a chance to respond. If you keep going, it feels like you have something to hide. It feels like you're not confident. So don't over-explain. You're just correcting the category error, if you will, when you are asked that question. Now, sometimes a client might keep pushing. Yeah, but if it takes you less time, right, that they go down that road. And this is where you have to redirect to value and you have to make it concrete. So try something like this. Look, I get it. Let me ask you a quick question so we're solving the right problem here. Are you trying to reduce costs or are you trying to get a stronger result with less friction on your side? Most of the time, they're going to say or respond with some version of stronger result, less friction, fewer problems, less stress, fewer questions. And because really that's what they're looking for, right? Everyone wants their job to be easier. And when they're hiring somebody, they don't want to create more work for themselves. The reason they're outsourcing something is they want that process to be easy. So let's just say they admit, yeah, I want better results. Then you can respond with, great. That's exactly why I use AI in the process. It improves speed, it improves consistency, but the value isn't the typing. The value is the judgment and the standards behind the work. I've spent 22 years building the editorial judgment and discernment to make the right calls, to protect your voice, and avoid the mistakes that create rework or brand risk. If you want me accountable for that outcome, the fee stays tied to the outcome, not to the tool. And just a quick qualifier, when I say outcomes, I'm not promising direct trackable ROI on every assignment. Most of the time, these are qualitative outcomes I'm talking about. Clearer messaging, stronger voice, fewer revisions, faster approvals, better alignment, less friction. And those are the things that make the work perform. This is the same general move or strategy that you see in solid pricing objection handling, which is that you don't lead with price, you lead with what success looks like, and then you connect price back to that. Sometimes the truth is this, the client really does have a hard budget. So in those cases, you can give them two options, and both of these options protect your positioning. So here's the language you could use. If we need to reduce the fee, we can absolutely do that. We just need to reduce the scope or the responsibility. So I'm not taking on the same outcome risk for a lower fee. Then you can offer a clean trade. You could have really two options here. Option A is we keep the full outcome, the full standards, the full process, and the fee stays the same. Or option B is we reduce the scope. So for example, fewer deliverables, fewer revisions, less stakeholder wrangling, less strategic involvement, or I deliver a tighter draft and your team handles the final polish of that draft. Right? So you're essentially saying there's a trade-off here. You're giving them two options. You can offer less for less, but you're not willing to offer the same for less. This is also a classic consulting move. When price is the objection, you either increase perceived value or you reduce the scope. What you do not do is discount the same package. Now, one thing I would avoid saying in these situations is, well, AI doesn't really save that much time. And I see a lot of writers do this, and they mean it. It's true. Like they've found, look, it helps me, but it's not the productivity savings across the board that you might think. The reason you don't want to say that, even if it's true sometimes, is that it sounds defensive. So notice that I inserted a bit about that in one of the scripts, but I didn't make it a big deal. I instead wedged it inside a different point as an aside. So I did throw it in there, but that wasn't what I led with. When you use this as one of your key arguments or one of your key elements of your response, it just invites back a discussion or an argument about minutes, about hours, and that's the exact frame you're trying to get away from. So instead, I would just keep it simple. The tool affects efficiency, but the fee is tied to responsibility and to outcome. Now, if you want fewer pricing conversations like this, you got to do two things. First, you have to stop selling deliverables as the main thing. This is something I've been harping on more and more in my newsletter and my podcast for the past year or two. You have to sell an upstream outcome plus implementation. I'm not saying don't do the writing, don't offer writing. That's not it at all. Okay, there's way more nuance than that. What I'm saying is, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to give you 4 blog posts, it's instead offer monthly content direction and a publishing system plus 4 posts. You see how I have bundled several things in there? There's outcome, there's thinking, there's advisory, there's planning, there's strategy, all of it bundled together into a solution, as opposed to, okay, yeah, I can write 4 blog posts for you. Here's the fee. Here's another example. Instead of an email sequence, you offer message architecture plus a conversion sequence. When you sell that way, when you present your value and your offers that way, the client is less likely to reduce you to a vendor who just cranks out words. Now, I realize many writers don't like to hear this. They don't want to reposition themselves or reframe their value, rework their offers, get out of their comfort zone. I respect that, and I truly understand this fear. I also recognize that many prospects and clients don't want that. They just want the 4 blog posts. My argument there, though, is that that may not be the right client for you. Now, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to keep the lights on. I get it. I'm just talking about directionally. In the long run, that is not the direction you want to keep heading on. Sometimes we have to take those opportunities. Sometimes we have to take those projects, and you got to pay the bills. I get it. But you should be moving in a different direction. Not moving in that direction is going to create a tremendous amount of risk for your business. You may still have a choice today, but I truly believe that your options are going to continue to narrow drastically over the next year or two. And you will likely find yourself in a very difficult spot if you don't start to shift how you think about and communicate your value. The second thing is that you need to address AI proactively. You can do this briefly, you can do it confidently, but you do have to address it. So here's one simple line you can use in proposals or in emails. I use AI as part of my workflow to increase speed and consistency, but I remain fully responsible for strategy, accuracy, voice, and final quality. That's it. Short, clear, no apology. Notice I didn't take a defensive stance there. You just say it. And here's the mindset that actually makes this easier over time. None of us want to spend a lot of time defending basic value, right? The clients you want to work with are not the ones who quibble about whether an AI tool should reduce the fee that you quote them. The clients you want are forward-looking. They understand value isn't about keystrokes. They see you as someone who brings judgment and standards and outcomes to their work. They don't grill you about efficiency. Instead, they ask how AI can help them integrate better workflows or unlock under-leveraged assets or create new types of strategic work. And look, it's okay if some clients still ask about price. It doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make them irredeemable clients. It's just a normal human reaction when something looks like a new lever of efficiency. And sometimes it's the CEO breathing down their neck and saying that you have to figure out a way to cut expenses and cut your budget and make sure everyone uses AI. And this is happening. I get it. But your North Star in positioning is building relationships with the clients who get it. The ones who see you as a partner to call when they have new opportunities emerging from the shift in how work actually gets done. Or better yet, the ones who call you to help them come up with new ideas or rethink their workflows. That's the long-term way out of these pricing conversations, finding and keeping clients who already understand where the value lives and where it doesn't. And let's be honest with ourselves. Many times we can tell what kind of client that's going to be just from the discovery call. based on the vibe they're giving off, based on the questions they're asking, based on what they're saying, you can kind of tell what kind of pressure they're under, how they're thinking about things. And, sometimes we lie to ourselves and say, no, maybe they'll be fine. More and more, you're going to have to use better judgment when you decide to bring clients on. Again, sometimes you got to keep the lights on. I get it. But over the midterm and long term, you can't afford to have 100%, even 90 or 80% of your clients as keep the lights on clients. You have to be more strategic. You have to move in a different direction. So bottom line, the next time a client says, shouldn't this cost less now that you use AI? You don't need to defend yourself. Instead, you need to be ready to reframe what they're buying, which is judgment, standards, and outcomes, with you accountable for the results. This takes practice. This takes getting out of your comfort zone. This requires a reframe, and it requires, in many cases, an emerging new model for your business. But I'm going to leave you with this question. Where in your current offers are you accidentally training clients to think they're buying writing time instead of buying an outcome? Give that some thought this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Have a great rest of your day. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And just a quick reminder to grab your free copy of my latest book, Earn More in Less Time: The Proven Mindset, Strategies, and Actions to Prosper as a Freelance Writer. You can get your free copy at b2blauncher.com, where you will also find the detailed show notes to this and all my other episodes. Enjoy and have a great day.